I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune RESET, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Autoimmune RESET podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today I want to talk to you about the vital connection between folate and autoimmune disease, in particular autoimmune diseases like systemic lupus. And I'll be explaining more about that as we go through the episode. I get pretty obsessed, I would say, with certain nutrients or certain systems in the body. And I have definitely been in the throes of that with my obsession with folate. And when I see patterns with clients, that's when I really get interested and I really start thinking, actually, this could be a factor for many of my clients. I will often see low folate. It can get tested in what I call my cell health test, which is the metabolomics panel by Genova. And that can give me an indication of my client's folate need. And also there is the methylation panel as well, which will look at factors which affect the folate cycle. So there are a few ways that I'm assessing this in my clients. And often when we work on their folate deficiency and the underlying issue that is causing the folate deficiency, they see their symptoms improve. And that's what I'd like for you as well. So I wanted to talk to you about folate, why it's important, what might be causing a folate deficiency, and what you can do if you do have a folate deficiency when it comes to nutrition and lifestyle. So let's talk about what folate is. It is vitamin B9. It's one of the B vitamins, but it's extremely important for cellular health and DNA repair. So when you are living with a systemic autoimmune disease like lupus, it's important to understand the role of folate, because if you think about it, this vitamin is so important in repairing our DNA. And often in these systemic autoimmune conditions, the autoimmune disease or the immune system in this autoimmune disease is targeting a component of self tissue. And if the DNA is damaged, then the immune system is going to see that as damaged and start the attack, or it may be exposed to certain elements of the cell which it wasn't exposed to before and then begins to attack. And if we can help with our nutrient levels and make sure that our folate levels stay at optimal amounts, then that is going to help to keep our DNA healthy and hopefully stop the immune reaction that we see in various autoimmune diseases. Folate deficiency is linked to a number of different symptoms. It can cause fatigue and general weakness. It can cause cognitive difficulties like brain fog. It can cause anemia. It can cause digestive issues like bloating and diarrhea. I mean, we often see gut issues being related to our gut bacteria or maybe other things going on in our gut. But the truth is, if we have certain nutrient deficiencies like folate, that can affect our gut health as well. And it's just something, again, that I'm looking for. So I may run a stool test, but when I run that cell test as well, that's going to give me all the information I need to really understand what is at the root of some of these symptoms. You may also experience mouth sores, and this is something that I see time and time again in my clients, that they have a lot of mouth sores. And also depression and mood changes can be very much linked to folate. So let's talk about what folate is. As I said, it is a B vitamin and it has various functions in the body, including DNA synthesis and repair. It's also important for cellular division. And as you may be aware, when it comes to pregnancy, the recommendation is to take folic acid. And the reason for that is because when you are deficient in folate, it can lead to birth defects because you need to be growing the baby and have the nutrients to grow a baby and a human being. And if you don't have those, then that can cause an issue with cell division and DNA synthesis. And then folate is also important for the production of our red and white blood cells. So both our red blood cells that help us oxygenate the body, but also our immune cells, which help us defend our bodies from pathogens and make sure that our body is able to detect certain cancer cells. But on top of that, it helps with autoimmune disease and keeping our immune system in check and keeping our immune system tolerant. So it has various different roles to play in the body. I think when it comes to autoimmune disease, the effect that it can have on our immune system and our red blood cells is absolutely key. But also the fact that it helps with DNA repair and keeping our cells healthy is also another really important factor. So what causes folate deficiency? Well, it can be caused by a number of different factors. And I just wanted to pull out the fact that if you are taking methotrexate, which is prescribed for various autoimmune conditions, that can actually cause low folate levels. It's just to be mindful of, and in conventional medicine they will often recommend supplementing folate if you are taking methotrexate. And methotrexate is a medication which is taken for lupus, rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis, and it actually works by inhibiting folate metabolism in cells, which slows down cell division and reduces the immune system's overreactivity. So it can be helpful in that sense, and they use it for cancer as well for that reason. And it can be an effective way to control the autoimmune response. And I know many clients who have taken methotrexate and it has helped their symptoms in the short term, but obviously it is worth working on those underlying issues so you can get your body stronger. And it's not that I am against medication in any way, but what I want for anybody, including my clients, if they can get to the point where they don't need medication, that is the ideal solution. But there are many other causes of folate deficiency, and the most obvious one is a poor diet, because if you're not eating leafy greens and legumes and those folate-rich foods, then you are more likely to be deficient in folate. So that might be the first thing to check. Are you eating enough folate-rich foods in your diet? And if not, find a way to incorporate folate more often in your diet. And spinach is just a really good source of folate. I will put it in my smoothies. I will throw it into curries if I'm making a curry. I will have it as a side dish with garlic. So there are lots of different ways you can incorporate spinach into your diet, and that is rich in folate. Other causes of folate include having malabsorption issues. So if you have celiac disease or inflammatory bowel disease, it may be the case that you're not absorbing enough folate, and that can lead to a deficiency. Excess alcohol consumption can also cause an issue with folate absorption, and it can actually interfere with that, and that can cause low folate. And there are certain genetic factors to be aware of. So we have genetic variations in our genes, and some are optimal and some mean that that gene isn't working as effectively as it could. And one of the genes that has been identified when it comes to folate is the MTHFR gene. And this gene is responsible for the methylation cycle. And methylation is a process in the body that helps to switch on and off biological reactions by donating a methyl group, which is a carbon and hydrogen, so it's CH3, and that is donated to different biological reactions to almost switch them on and off. And it's really important, methylation, for lots of different reactions and lots of different processes that are happening in the body. And if you have a variation in the MTHFR gene, it means that your body is less likely to be able to convert folic acid, which is a more synthetic form of folate, to methylfolate, which means you are going to be more reliant on methylfolate for methylation to be working effectively in your body. But it's worth touching on methylation because it is a process that is essential for many bodily functions, including detoxification, hormone regulation, and our neurotransmitter production. And neurotransmitters are important for our mood. They're important for the choices that we make around food. They are important for how well we're feeling and how we are able to manage stress. So they are absolutely vital. And if our methylation is out, then it means that those systems are going to be out as well. And not only that, methylation is absolutely crucial for our DNA repair. And that is particularly important if you have an autoimmune disease where chronic inflammation can lead to ongoing damage to those cells and those tissues, whichever cell is targeted by the immune system. And we need to make sure we keep our DNA healthy, because one of the ways that they test for systemic autoimmune diseases is to look for antibodies that are against our own DNA. That's one of the ways that it's diagnosed. It's not the only thing that's looked at, but it is one of the factors that's taken into consideration. And when you have autoantibodies against your own cells, that can take time to resolve. And one, you want to be working on your cellular health, and two, you want to be working on lowering inflammation in your body, which is absolutely key. And I will be sharing more information about this in my new program, the Inflammation Reset. I will share more details about that in the show notes. If you want to find out more about this program, you can join the program at any time. And it is a 10-week program that you are part of the program and you receive group coaching every week. But you can join today, you can join next month. I am sharing in that program the underlying root cause of autoimmune diseases, and I'm helping you understand what is your underlying root cause as well. And then I'm sharing my 10-step process, which I used on myself and I use with my clients to really make meaningful changes to your health to help lower inflammation. I'd love you to be part of it. Feel free to learn more by clicking the link in the show notes. And I'd love to hear from you. But let's get back to folate, because folate is the active form of folate, which is methylfolate. And that's what the key player is in the methylation cycle. And as I said, if you're not able to convert folic acid to methylfolate, then you may have a problem with your methylation cycle. So if you have a folate deficiency, the whole methylation process can be disrupted, and that can further exacerbate things like inflammation and cellular damage. And unfortunately, that creates that vicious cycle, especially in autoimmune conditions like lupus, where inflammation is already an ongoing issue. Now, there are various ways that you can support your folate levels, particularly if you are dealing with a deficiency. Now, that's probably the simplest approach you can take. And you may know that you have variations in some of these genetics. And if that's the case, then it's just to be mindful to include these foods in your diet on a daily basis. And some of the best foods and the most folate-rich foods are things like leafy greens, like spinach, kale, Swiss chard. You'll find it in legumes like lentils, chickpeas, and black beans. Avocados are rich in folate, asparagus and Brussels sprouts are rich in folate, and also eggs and citrus fruits like oranges. So these are some really great high folate rich foods. What you will notice about some of these foods, like the leafy greens, like the legumes, you can just add those to your meals. You don't have to make them the main meal, but they are so easy to throw into a bolognese or a curry, or you can add to a chili. And you can also have meat if you eat meat. You can have meat in the dish. Then you can add in these extra nutrient-rich foods as well, which are going to increase the amount of folate in your diet. So that's, I would say, the most simple approach to improve your folate levels. But the truth is, when it comes to folate, you really need to understand what is driving the deficiency if it isn't to do with your diet. And there are a couple of ways that you can think about that. For example, if it is part of your genetics. If you have those single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are those genetic variations in some of your methylation genes, especially your MTHFR, then that might be a factor for you, and you can find out from doing genetic testing. And I run genetic testing in my clinic. I have been trained through DNA Life, and I will often use life codes as well. So there's a couple of different companies that I work with on that. But by doing those genetic tests, you are going to get that insight into which system in your body needs the most support. And there are specific tests that you can do around methylation as well. And you can have your whole methylation cycle mapped. And that's another panel that I have in my clinic. And I have a methylation testing package that you can do as well, which is going to look into those markers for methylation and which system in your body needs the most support. And it will also test for your genetics as well, because genetics is a key piece of methylation. You really need to know what your genetics are around methylation to then know which particular system and area needs the most support. And it's going to be different for everyone, because it's worth being mindful about supplementing folate or different types of vitamins, but particularly around methylfolate, because some of the research has indicated that actually too much folate can be a risk factor for certain cancers. The jury's still out, and nobody knows for sure whether this is an issue or not, because the studies are very varied around it. But it's just worth bearing in mind that when you have too much of certain nutrients, it can almost be as harmful as having too little. And you just have to be careful. And that's why testing is one of the best ways to take a personalized approach when it comes to your health, especially around nutrients and your nutrient need. I always say this about vitamin D. It's worth checking your vitamin D levels, because if vitamin D is too high, that can lead to kidney stones and other issues. So it's just worth knowing, what is my baseline? What do I need? Because having high amounts of any vitamin isn't going to make you feel better. It's when you are deficient in that vitamin or have a high need in that vitamin and you need to take it, that you are going to see results from taking it. If you already have high amounts and then you just try and take more of it, that won't have an effect in the body, and it's not going to be helpful. So it is just worth knowing your levels. And obviously, if you would like to find out more about the testing or more about my services, then feel free to book a free call with me. You'll find the link for that in the show notes, and we can discuss how I'm able to help you, the testing I offer, especially if you have some of the symptoms around folate deficiency. And it can cause so many varied symptoms because it affects the cells in this way, and the cells are everywhere in the body, and everybody is going to have different symptoms based on their specific underlying weaknesses or whatever's going on in their gut. And there are many factors to consider, but for some people they might feel extremely fatigued, somebody else might have mouth ulcers, or the next person might have photosensitivity, as in having issues with skin rashes when they're exposed to the sun. There are many different ways that this can affect you, and it's just finding out the way that it affects you, what you can do about it, and what the underlying cause is as well. And that's how I might be able to help. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is the fact that folate is similar to vitamin B12 in that it can cause megablastic anemia. And megablastic anemia can be caused by low vitamin B12 as well. And I've talked about it quite a lot on the podcast because it's something that affected me. And it is when you have enlarged red blood cells, and it's to do with how folate helps with cell production. When the cells are enlarged, it means that they haven't divided properly. And you may think, well, why does it matter if the red blood cells are enlarged? Well, if they're enlarged, they're not able to transport oxygen around the body, which can completely deplete you of energy. So just by working on your folate or your vitamin B12 and helping with your red blood cell function, it can have such a knock-on effect to other systems in the body, because suddenly they're being oxygenated, suddenly the energy is being produced properly, suddenly they can function properly, and that can have such a knock-on effect to the rest of your health, which is why it's absolutely key. There is something called MCV that you will find in a full blood count. It stands for mean corpuscular volume, and it's looking at the size of your red blood cells. And if that is at the higher end of the scale, then it might mean that you have a folate or vitamin B12 deficiency, and you need to get to the bottom of what that is. And that's where actually testing for those key vitamins, but actually testing for them at the functional level, so at the cellular level, which isn't just looking at the amounts in the blood, can be really helpful and give you an idea of what is driving it. Because when I found out that I had a raised MCV, I needed to look into whether folate was driving it or vitamin B12, and I found that vitamin B12 was driving it more for me, but it might be that folate is driving it more for you. So that is, again, something else to look out for. If you have a folate deficiency and it is causing you to have enlarged red blood cells, then that might be causing your symptoms, and it just shows that by addressing these underlying issues, it can really help you to find relief from your symptoms. So folate is an essential nutrient, but it is especially important if you have a systemic autoimmune disease like lupus. There are many reasons that you can have a folate deficiency, and I think looking at your genetics is absolutely key. If you find that you are low in folate and you are eating a fairly folate-rich diet already and you don't think that's a factor, you might want to look into your gut health and absorption issues as well. We need folate to help us with our DNA repair, proper methylation function as well. It's absolutely key in keeping your cells healthy and functioning well. And if you are experiencing any symptoms of folate deficiency, then it is worth looking into. And just to remind you that if you are taking methotrexate, it is certainly worth keeping on top of that and making sure that you know where your levels are, because you don't want to end up having more symptoms as a result of helping to reduce inflammation in your body. If you have any questions around folate or anything about lupus or autoimmune disease, then feel free to pop over to my Instagram account, which is at the Autoimmunity Nutritionist. It's the best place to send me a message. You can also join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. It's a great community of people who are living with autoimmune disease and chronic illness and finding the best ways to manage them and thrive in life. If you would like more support, you can either book a free initial consultation with me. You'll find the link for that in the show notes, or you can join my signature program, the Inflammation Reset, where I'll be guiding you through my 10-step approach to reversing inflammation and feeling your best again. So I look forward to hearing from you. If not, have a fantastic rest of your day and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.